Good evening, Chelsea fans. Another day, another manager as beleaguered Chelsea claw themselves back at the Etihad to claim a draw against the odds in stoppage time, thanks to an equaliser from Enzo Fernandez with Callum McFarlane at the wheel. We'll be reviewing this match and discuss incoming new boss Liam Rosenior with plenty to dissect here. We'll end this week's pod with a preview of Wednesday night's Premier League fixture at Craven Cottage versus Fulham, with Alex Dangerfield providing opposition view. Let's jump into it.
Pep Guardiola's Manchester City won. Callum McFarlane's Chelsea won. A 94th minute equaliser at the Etihad from Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah, it felt like a really ominous one, didn't it, going into this? The circumstances couldn't really have been worse, given the obviously the exit of the manager, all the turmoil that comes with that. Caicedo being out, Cucurella being out, it's all signs pointed to an absolute drubbing by City. But actually, Callum McFarlane in his audition for Chelsea really set us up quite well. I thought it was quite a brave start. We looked fairly regimented. It was good to see a greater sense of simplicity in our tactics and players playing in natural positions mostly, with the exception of probably Gusto at left back for the first half, which was not out of choice, but given this injury to Cucurella, it felt like we needed change midway through that first half when we started to get overwhelmed by City, and I did question when the lineups came out whether we were too attacking with Esteval, Palmer, and Enzo Fernandez all basically leaving James exposed as a one-man midfield. And so it materialized. McFarlane clearly showed his adaptability and his ability to read the game, which we've often criticized Maresca for not doing. And we saw the introduction of Andre Santos for Esteval at halftime, and this precipitated a massive change in the sort of trajectory of this game. The back line looked reasonably solid in the second half, despite Cucurella not being there. We saw Gusto reverting to his natural position at right back, and a true right back, not a inverted fake centre mid right back that Maresca shoved down our throats multiple times. We saw Delap coming on and really stretching the City defence and providing a massive outlet for us. And the Etihad, I think, has been the scene of many a Maresca crime where we tend to turn up, wilt, and we often see Maresca with a little smile on his face when he's happy to lose by one or two goals, which has just been utterly frustrating and a sign of weakness, ultimately. I think it felt like the opposite here. You know, we were really pushing at 1-0. We were probably never going to get the win there, but straining every sinew to a player to leave the Etihad with at least something, and so it materialized with that late goal that I think embodied a lot of the errors of Maresca, because we saw Gusto in his natural part of the pitch where we haven't seen him for months, really years now under Maresca, taking on a player, finding the space and delivering a decisive cross into the box that resulted in Enzo Fernandez's equaliser. So really positive and encouraging, I would say, for this fixture. Couple of concerns. Neto was really poor, really profligate, which was massively frustrating, and he's been called out at length there. Palmer's clearly not fit, but this game felt like a massive weight off Chelsea's shoulders, I think, and a real huge relief to see Maresca gone personally, and this reversion to almost simple tactics and back to basics that we saw with Callum McFarlane, and hopefully we'll see again against Fulham on Wednesday.
I think while there was always that possibility of getting mauled at the Etihad, we have seen obviously that 6-0 under Sarri. I think you're absolutely right in your assertion that it felt as if it was drifting to yet another kind of 1-2-0 defeat. That was really kind of flat game. That first half, I felt, wasn't sure how much of that was down to us, rather City being slightly off the pace, potentially slightly jaded after their game at the Stadium of Light. The one kind of critical omission with that lineup, I'm not sure you did mention, was Robert Sanchez, Jorgensen in net, and both yourself and I slash every Chelsea fan is definitely not a fan of his. And so it played out. I thought poor from Badiashile to let Reinders kind of ball roll away from him, find a yard, but beating at the near post with a weak foot, decent strike, but really has to be doing better there. And as you say, very much felt resigned to that sort of same fate. You can imagine Maresca almost shaking hands, quoting full time how kind of Pep City have been together for many, many years in a long, successful project as we sort of concede a 1-0 defeat and move on. But it was all changed that second half, as you say. I thought Santos coming on, we keep calling for more bodies in that midfield. And as a result, I thought Enzo Fernandez, fair play to him, had one of his best games in a while. Sensational kind of pirouette setting the ball up for Neto, who astoundingly spooned over the bar. As you say, a very, I don't want to say uncharacteristic because he is kind of inconsistent as with others, but a shocking outing from Pedro Neto. He has been decent of late, but that was not one to be proud of on Sunday. Palmer as well looks off it and kind of seemed a little bit rattled at the Etihad. I think the Guardiola leg break, heightened tensions there. We saw kind of Delap coming on as well. That there was something in the air for sure.
George, without that Enzo Fernandez goal, do you think we're here saying he had a really good game or not? Has that clouded our judgment slightly? Because I was really frustrated with him again in this game. It felt like until Santos came on, we had a one-man midfield. Definitely improved in the second half in that sort of left advanced pocket he was occupying. Definitely, you mentioned the pirouette to create the netted chance. That was great, but it felt like he was getting walked past, at least in the first half. I'm not sure he did have a great game, but I'm happy to be corrected.
Essentially not great. Um, and I've been a critic in the past, but I do think actually the Bournemouth game and City on the ball, he did show some of that quality that we've been crying out for a while. And his defensive deficiencies were fully on show in the first half in both of those games. But I will once again refrain that I believe the setup really wasn't helping here. Our overall criticism for me is that balance in midfield going forward and how viable the two of those are together. I do feel in that City game, it was potentially a little bit of a free hit, bit of a free roll in that second half. No expectations. Santos in there, he was freed up. And say he does make that run at the end and does ultimately pop up on the score sheet. So while I'm not his biggest fan, I will give him credit this week.
Final point to discuss probably from this game, a player we've not seen much of, Jorel Hato. How did you see his shift at left back in the final third of that game?
A baptism of fire. I have to say, within the first kind of couple of plays on the pitch, he was given some complete hospital passes, kind of inexplicable rugby box kick from Jorgensen, minutes onto the pitch, and a very shaky start, but fair play to him. Beyond that, I didn't notice him too much, which away at the Etihad is probably a positive. On the flip side, want to really praise Josh Achimpong again. Looked really assured at moments, playing at right back, not his favoured position. We know longer term for both Chelsea and England, he will be at centre back, but look really assured. I never, absolutely never want Chelsea to lose, but that final dagger for Manchester City was a slightly mixed emotion for me. I'd semi-made peace with the result, as say potentially conditioned by Maresca, our fate at the Etihad, but ultimately that result completely dents City's title hopes. Couple that with the Guardiola leg breaker and Diaz out on top, an Arsenal title now feels inevitable, doesn't it?
It does, but ultimately, I got caught up in the moment, and I wanted to push for that equaliser. A draw was, I said before the game, actually, a draw was probably the worst scenario because it doesn't really do much for us in the context of the league, um, and obviously catapults Arsenal into a 6 point lead over City at the midway point. But in the moment, it felt right, and I love the equaliser. And ultimately, if Man City aren't to win the league, it won't be because of that Enzo Fernandez equaliser. There's a multitude of reasons why they won't, particularly around Arsenal's success in their squad building and this massive armory they've built.
No, I think you're right. It's definitely a net positive. We've got to think about Chelsea. We don't want to become too Spursy and can kind of
Exactly.
continually taking joy in others' downfall. Ultimately, we need to improve our record at these big away fixtures, and who knows, maybe a point there will kind of foster belief going into future tough away games,
Yeah.
both at the Etihad and elsewhere going forward.
George, a small unmentioned subplot to this game that I want to pick up on is Wesley Fofana's absence. We found out, I think it was an hour before kickoff, that he was going to miss this game because of a fever he'd picked up. I don't know if you saw, but after the news Maresca had been sacked, Fofana posted a Instagram story of him on the Alps, skiing. For a player who's missed so much football and he gets a couple of days off, I think, after that Bournemouth game, taking the decision to go skiing and ultimately picking up an illness that results in him missing a massive Super Sunday fixture just feels very Wesley Fofana, doesn't it? Not serious.
I mean, it's not quite Jack Grealish taking his mates on a Christmas night out, but as you say, very frustrating and ultimately unacceptable. But I think it speaks volumes to the kind of comfortable nature around the club, around those kind of multi-year contracts that players are tied down to. We've questioned in the past whether such contracts guaranteeing generational wealth lead to laziness, complacency. Are players really going to put in the extra yards to get back on that pitch and fight for their place and fight for future deals and improved terms if ultimately they can kick back in the Alps and
Yeah.
sit happy? A shout out to Hugh, his hot take coming in. Liam Rosenior signs for Chelsea on a I repeat, 6-year deal. How are we feeling about this one, Ryan?
Think I can preface my slightly more positive take with an acknowledgement that it is slightly absurd that a manager with a CV like Liam Rosenior's can get a 6-year deal at Chelsea in 2026. That said, there is something about this move and him as a man, as a manager, that just feels right and it feels like a good fit. I think what we've lacked is a manager with charisma in recent years. I think Poch maybe had a little bit of it. Potter absolutely didn't. Reska was charmless, as we've said in the past. And I think this ability to relate to players and communicate with them and speak to them on a human level will be a massive strength of his. And we've seen a multitude of clips and interviews that he's done that really speaks to his ability to connect with players. And I think this will be massive for us. He's a young manager. He's taking over a young squad, and he's acknowledged this in his inaugural interview for Chelsea, or I think it was rather his exit interview for Strasbourg. So it's going to be challenging, and the task for him is to grow alongside these young players and this young squad, which is totally unusual. But what else? What else do you expect at Blueco Chelsea? Tactically, beyond the sort of man management skills, tactically, I'm not super familiar with what his principles are. I've read quite a few pieces online that draw comparisons to Maresca, and I'm really hoping that's not the case. And he watched the reversion back to simplicity in the Man City game and looks to keep things simple, at least to start. I don't want to see Malo Gusto playing centre mid. I actually don't mind Cucurella at times inverting because I think it suits his sort of the tenacious nature of his game and allows for overloads in midfield. But I don't want to see Malo Gusto inverting at all under any circumstances. Callum McFarlane, definitely a big shout out to him for steadying the tide. And I think I'm really happy that he's able to take us into the Fulham game because I think had we brought in Liam Rosenior with one day of training straight into Fulham away, which has been a pretty tricky fixture for us down the years, and Liverpool just dropped points there. City conceded four there a few weeks back. A loss there, and suddenly all that positivity and momentum is gone, and he's already, fighting, swimming against the tide there. So right decision there. Hopefully get a nice win against Charlton under his belt in the FA Cup next Saturday. 6-year deal is absolutely a show of faith from the sporting directors and the ownership at Chelsea. I think the reality, as we discussed last week, is that we're not in market for top level managers, high pedigree managers anymore. Ultimately, we need someone who is happy to work under the absolute barbarity that is Blueco, and that all the structures and rigors within that that he's going to have to adhere to. But good news is he's obviously familiar with that already from his time at Strasbourg under their leadership. And as I mentioned, we ultimately need someone who's going to grow alongside this squad because we can't attract a Jurgen Klopp, a Xabi Alonso, a Pep Guardiola to this team currently. So I think there are probably more qualified candidates, but there's something about him I'm really excited for.
I say I'm absolutely torn on that assertion that we cannot attract top tier. I think it's more a refusal from the board to concede errors and take a back foot on certain elements.
Under this leadership, we can't attract them, I think. Under the reality as it is, the structure of Chelsea, the sporting directors in place, I don't think we can attract them. As a club and our pedigree, I think we can, but the reality on the ground means no one in their right mind would probably want to, was more my point.
Glad to hear that. But I mean, the definition of insanity is making the same mistake over and over. I think on the previous pod, I called ambitiously for the appointment of Luis Enrique. Obviously, not possible mid-season, but one for longer term. And my clear assertion is fine. Okay, we're trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to go for this long contract, low wage youth model across football, groundbreaking, completely different. We've seen promise there from individual players, but I think it's total negligence to have kind of rookies leading that. If anything, there's more of a case, more of a necessity for an elite manager at the helm. Really striking the club's statement today. A fellow colleague, a Guna, pointed out, while there will continue to be a focus on player development, the club's expectations and ambitions remain high. I think sadly this tells you everything there is to know. I'll give him a chance, I'll get behind him, but I'm very much fearing the Brightonification of our football club. He even had a brief stint there during his playing career. And on paper, this appointment does scarily feel Potter-esque. You'd actually argue that he possibly has a lesser CV. In fact, he's got no Premier League experience. And his kind of mild success in the Championship with Hull mirrors that of Potter with Swansea, promising, but ultimately kind of no promotion. And the seventh place finish with the souped up Strasbourg team very much resembles the Brighton top half finish under Potter, where in retrospect you would argue is the relative impact of recruitment, does that not far outweigh the managerial impact? Obviously, time will tell in terms of that Strasbourg project. But I will take yours and Wayne Rooney's word on it. You've borne witness to his skill set, oratory skill set in person. I think Wayne Rooney's coined him as good a coach as he's worked with. So clearly there is something there. This can't all just be great PR aligning. I will get behind him. I'll always behind Chelsea, and as I say, hopefully we can move forward with more of an ingratiated relationship with the fan base. I think we've spoken volumes about how Maresca failed to endear himself. A starting point would be for Rosenior to say the right things, which I really don't think is too difficult. What I will say though is he has to start well. I do think we have a favourable run of fixtures upcoming. Potentially that coincides with the decision. But ultimately, he's on the back foot. There's going to be talk about his credentials, his CV. As with any manager, you have to start well, but particularly when you don't have that star-studded CV to fall back on.
What do you think the logic is behind the 6-year deal? I mean, I'm almost certain he would have accepted a 2 or 3 year deal. So I'm curious, is this like a managerial amortization play? Does that apply with managers? Is it just a leap of faith in a man they're familiar with from his time at Strasbourg? And I presume there is a break clause of some degree within that as well to safeguard us financially.
You'd hope so. I've not yet delved into the intricacies of the financials, but I think we're all aware of the crazy terms that Graham Potter was signed on. Whether it's a club trying to assert belief in their decision, their man, or kind of more cynically, is there an element of kickbacks here? I think we've seen discussion with Joe Shield, City Group signings. Are there people within the board on the take here. Who knows? I mean, there's quotes from Rosenior being great mates with Winstanley, enjoying a positive relationship together, and ultimately luring him to Strasbourg. Your fear would be that there is some profiteering off this, and I sincerely hope not. But you're right; it seems completely illogical. Let's hope, for everyone's sake, there is an element of amortization there. I'm not aware of the contractual terms in terms of finances, but the one shred of evidence was that Potter's contract was completely disproportionate
Yep.
uh, to his standing in the game, and ultimately was a massive mistake. So let's hope history isn't repeated there.
I'm loving the press briefings that we're seeing from Chelsea this week, particularly now after the appointment of Rosenior, almost to cover our bases that we've exhausted all potential avenues in this managerial search. I'm seeing that apparently the whittled down shortlist was comprised of Liam Rosenior, the front runner obviously, and Felipe Luis. I don't actually believe we interviewed Felipe Luis, but that is what is being leaked now to the press.
Comedy. I have to say, the timing of that Amorim sacking, Ineos is United in total and utter despair. Undoubtedly, a bigger club than Chelsea could not have been better. For us as a fan base, for Rosenior, uh, looking to kick on, but more than anyone for Bluco, really kind of casting some of that spotlight away from the circus that is Chelsea in January 2026. Time now for the opposition view, a West London derby, but still at this current date, a managerless Chelsea. Fulham away, 7:30 kickoff on Wednesday at Craven Cottage. And joining us to preview this, we've got a friend of the pod and cottager, Alex Dangerfield. Welcome.
Famous cottager. Yeah, cheers for having me on. Thanks very much. Excited to get into it.
Happy New Year, mate. Let's
Yeah, you
crack
too.
on. So, what is the current feeling around the club, Fulham, January 2026?
It's a weird one. I think we're on a good run of form and sort of turning the new year. Things are good, but I think sort of like off the pitch, it's a bit sort of uncertainty around, Marco Silva as a few players out of contract and, you know, it's that sort of trepidation that we don't really know what's going to happen at the end of the season. But on the pitch, it's all good, I think, at the moment. Off the pitch, we're a bit of a shambles, not as much of a shambles as Chelsea are at the moment, but in terms of like our, pricing of tickets and, just it's how the club is run in general. But yeah, on the pitch, it's very good. Just hopefully we can tie Marco down to a couple of years and hopefully he doesn't go to Man United and hopefully they take Glasner instead of Silva. So
As I say, it's increasingly looking like Rosenior is going to be at the helm, maybe not for Wednesday, but beyond that. But Marco Silva definitely was a name linked. And I do think beyond that Everton stint, I mean, a lot top managers have failed there. Ancelotti comes to mind. He
mm,
is a very underrated coach. I mean, I guess our kind of take as outsiders of Fulham is a very sort of competitive side. Can't think of too many occasions where you guys have been on the end of a hiding. I mean, even that City crazy 9 goal thriller not long ago still made it very competitive and almost came back at the end. So combative, competitive,
yeah.
and as to say, Harry Wilson kind of comes to mind in recent weeks, adding a touch of class. He's in my fantasy team. Even the strike the other day, he hits that ball clean.
Yeah, no, he's been really decent. He's one of the players that's out of contract at the end of the summer that needs sorting out as well. But yeah, being competitive, like that's been sort of the way since Marco's come in, which is great. And I definitely get I'm a season ticket holder, so I get my value for money week in, week out. And when he goes, or if he hopefully he doesn't go, but if he does, there's a bit of worry around that. But yeah, Wilson, yeah, been so good, so good. He's just Marco seems to get like just that extra edge out of players, and he's exhibit A of that. Another one, Smith Rowe, he was a bit hit and miss for the first season. He could barely compete for longer than 60 minutes, but now he can finally do a full 90 minutes. He's his sharps toucher, and I think him and Wilson are our two sort of danger men, as it were, at the moment.
I've said I do remember kind of Harry Wilson under Frank Lampard's Derby
Mm.
with Mason Mount back in the day.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
latter's potentially overshadowed him in recent years, but he's very much coming to the forefront. As you say, I wasn't aware of that contractual situation, but I imagine there will be a few clubs interested.
It's mad because, like, sorry to interrupt, but like we nearly lost him in the end of the window to Leeds. Like they had a deadline day bid accepted at like 10 million, and I think from looking on Twitter and stuff, it was Marco ringing them up, ringing old Tony Khan up, being like, "What are you doing?" Like this, and now he's been probably our player of the season. So yeah, thank God he didn't go to Leeds.
Absolutely, some serious screamers scored of late. I mean, I have to say as
Mm.
well, I thought you guys were going to be more impacted by AFCON. Obviously, Bassi, Iwobi, part of that kind of strong combative side, but it definitely speaks volumes of a top manager. The
Yeah.
ability we've often complained, Maresca and Chelsea, when we make the wholesale changes, the outcome's very different. But I feel like, say, Fulham from the outside always seem to be in the game,
Mm.
competitive. I mean, even the striker position, Muniz, Jimenez, six and one, half dozen the other. It doesn't seem to matter personnel. You pretty much know what you're going to expect.
Yeah,
Kind of side.
I think Jimenez needs some more credit to be fair. Like he's 35, he literally does 90 minutes every single because Muniz is injured, right? So he's an absolute workhorse, and I think people need to show him a bit more credit for that. Um, but yeah, like I was talking to the guys I go to the games with, and we weren't really concerned about Bassi. We had Cuenca who's come in, and he's really solid, decent on the ball, decent defender. What we were really concerned about was Chukwueze and Iwobi going, like our two massive attacking threats for us. But so far it's been pretty decent. Smith Rowe steps up, like I said, and yeah, Wilson's continued that like pre-Christmas, early December form when he was like smashing like 2 goals and assists and all the rest of it.
Sounds ominous. So you sort of hinted at it, but what are your thoughts? What's your take on the circus that is Chelsea? I say in 2026, but just generally under Blueco.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a joke, isn't it? Like, yeah, I've got Chelsea mates, and I do dig into them a little bit, but it's just so confusing. I don't really understand what's going on, man. Like, you seem like an okay run club, like at the beginning, of winning stuff in the Abramovich era, and then obviously this new Blueco format with the Strasbourg links, and yeah, it's all a bit crazy, really. And I don't know. I think you might like the take, but you're obviously a bigger club than Fulham. Prior to the investment, I don't think you were that much bigger than us. It was like, if you take away the era, I think the fan bases are similar. Like the majority of them are based out of London. And it's hard to be like a mega club when you're not controlling that city like Liverpool United. And I think you always would struggle with that top investment. I think for the size of the club you are, I think you're in the right position, fifth, sixth, which might not sound great. And I know like you're used to winning Champions Leagues recently of late, but historically, fifth, sixth, Chelsea would take that, right? And I think if a player from abroad was coming, I think you'd find them always picking, unless it's money driven, your Arsenals, your Man United's, your Liverpool's, and then Chelsea would be the next choice after that. I'm not going to throw Spurs into the mix. I don't like Spurs, so
A very
yeah,
inflammatory take in terms of stature of club. I think you
yeah.
find that we are
Try and rattle
on
a
paper,
few listeners, mate.
if not the most winning club this century.
Yeah,
It's between us or City. And as for Arsenal, come back with a European Cup before we have that kind of conversation.
yeah. Well, there's
But
only
yeah,
one thing in Fulham, mate. That's all I know.
in terms of the current circus, I'm very grateful that United seem to have just one-upped us again today. So
Yeah,
undoubtedly a bigger club, and I would argue even further away from the summit in terms of football terms than we
yeah,
are at the
yeah. I
minute.
agree.
I have to
Hmm.
say, both sides obviously experiencing late drama, late chaos at the
Hmm.
weekend. I look back to these fixtures last year, 2-1 spins at respective away grounds. I'll be hoping for the same again here. What are your kind of predictions for the game? How do you think it's going to play out? And can we have a final score, please?
Well, I'd give anything to relive the Boxing Day of last year with the Meridia's last minute. Probably the number one highlight of all of my Christmases ever. It was amazing. So I'd love a 2-1, but I think it'll be a draw. I think a 1-1. Our defense has been pretty tight. I think we might just go same team as we played Liverpool, five at the back, keep it tight, hopefully get an early goal and sit in. I've got Neto in my fantasy team, so let's say he'll get the goal, and yeah, let's say Wilson will get another one.
I'm definitely going to be benching Harry Wilson for this one myself. No, I think a draw is kind of probably a fair prediction. Obviously, that late equaliser for us at City was unexpected and gives us a little bit of
Hmm.
renewed positivity headed into this one. I'm going to
And you've
call
got the manager bounce coming.
yeah. Well, let's see. The timing of that could be big. Let's have him in the door just beforehand, and I'm going to say, yeah, mirror last year, sneaky 2-1. I'm fearing I have to say some redemption for the Josh King gate at the start of the year.
Yeah.
Even
Oh,
even the offside call you guys were on the wrong end of the other day. So I'm
yeah.
fearing some karmic retribution and maybe let's say a Fulham penalty. So who'd take that? Would it be Jimenez? We'll go 1-0
Jimenez, yeah.
Fulham
He's
and
he's
another.
never missed.
Okay, so we'll go 1-0 Fulham, Jimenez from the spot, and then I'm going to call for a Chelsea spin. I'm going to call Palmer, who's received a bit of criticism, to be on the score sheet. And it's going to be backed up with Liam Delap's going to get his first goal of the season. Can you believe it?
Nice. I'm trying to remember if he scored against us against Ipswich with Ipswich, but I can't remember. But yeah, Palmer to get a redemption sort of goal. Yeah, I don't mind that.
I say, yeah,
Well, honest.
Liam's been absolutely horrendous, but finally showed some flickers of life the other day. So we're
Mm.
going to go 2-1 up, and then we're going to bring Tosin on for the last 10, and it's going to be shaky as. I have to say, I remember vividly you at the time stressing that you weren't a fan. I thought there was nothing that what could go wrong with a
The free
free
transfer.
transfer. Little
Yeah,
did I know the calamities that we were in for. So
yeah. He's we did try and warn you. We all tried to warn you.
you mentioned a few out of contract in the summer. You can have him back as a free
Oh
gesture
yeah.
of
Oh,
goodwill, as long as you
it's
give us
it. He
three
couldn't
points
he couldn't
on
lace Sister
Wednesday.
Diop's boots now.
I won't dispute that.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Don't
no
enjoy the
worries.
game too
I
much.
would I would say good luck, but yeah, no, see you Wednesday.
Catch you soon, mate.
Thanks everybody for tuning in once again this week. We'll be back next week to look into week one under the Liam Rosenior era, following next Saturday's FA Cup fixture at the Valley. In the meantime, stay warm and have a great rest of your week.